Hey everybody, today I'm going to make a video that I don't normally make, so buckle up because this is me freestyling it and doing something I don't normally do, which I hate. So it's all your fault that I'm doing this. Short story long, I'm going to do a response video to a whole bunch of questions in the comments of my Battletech Alpha Strike videos about why I chose to use a 12-sided polyhedral die instead of two 6-sided dice added together in the rules. It's fairly controversial. I get asked about it all the time. So instead of writing the response a bajillion times over and over again, I'm going to make a video to explain the math and nuts and bolts and the game design reasons for why I do it. But this is an opportunity to make another kind of video at the same time that is completely related to the video or to the question being asked and the reason why I'm doing this. And so buckle up because there's people that are probably going to be interested in this. There's people that aren't. So before we go any further, if you believe that games can only be played exactly by the rules as written in the rulebook and that is the only way to play them, this video is not for you. It's going to make you mad. Just turn it off. Just turn it off. Stop watching. Go watch something else. Go watch a tournament game somewhere of games that are being played with measuring widgets and trigonometry and precise dice rolls and boxes at a very high level. Those games are for you. Nothing wrong with that. Absolutely your hobby. This is me talking about my personal hobby, and that does not impinge or reduce or minimize what you like about miniature wargaming. So we good? Everybody who's still here is still here to hear me talk about my personal hobby? Sweet. So I'm gonna talk about my personal hobby, and then I'm gonna tell you what I think you should do with your personal hobby. Because, I mean, if I can't pontificate with 100,000 subscribers, I don't know why I'm even here. And so that'll lead us to part one. I'll get to the boring game designing math Battletech answer question after that. So set the scene. It's 2020. Owen and I start playing Battletech for the first time. I've avoided playing Battletech forever because the miniatures just didn't grab me. Catalyst Game Labs does beautiful plastic miniatures. I like giant robots. I paint piles of them. For those of you that have never played Battletech, it's a venerable game, as old as any Games Workshop game. It's been played forever, has a die-hard fan base, a massive catalog of like background novels and like storyline, and a space opera plot that's, I would say, even more, if you like Dune, then this is for you. It is a convoluted, generationally driven George R.R. Martin style story of, politics and madness across space. So there's the scene. I like painting toy soldiers. All these cool new plastic mechs show up. I paint tons of them. And Battletech is divided into two subcategories. Battletech, sort of classic Battletech, which is a hex map based kind of a older style game system, which is more sort of concerned with resolution of the outcomes. So you roll 2d6 to see if you hit something, but then you roll like 7 other dice on charts to see where the damage lands and what happens. And the outcomes are kind of the point of the game, which is cool and very simulation-y. But with more miniatures being available, the game Alpha Strike was created, which is more of a contemporary 40K style company on company level game where you could have like a half dozen or a dozen mechs on the table at once. And you've seen me play both on the channel, and I enjoy both. But me being me, and this is where the my hobby part comes into it, I painted up a ton of these mechs really fast. This is what happens. I get excited about something and you'll watch me go like all in all at once. You go back to my Instagram, there's like a month where I'm just painting Battletech mechs because I was so excited about them and they're easy to paint and fun. So I do that. I fall in love with Alpha Strike, but I'm not super duper like excited about like the speed of the way it's played in the core rules, where you just roll once and then you apply all the damage. Stuff died really fast, and there was other cool rules in the game, like your systems getting internally damaged, criticals and stuff like that could happen, and I felt like they didn't happen enough, so I went with an optional rule in the rulebook called variable damage. And variable damage is a way of breaking all of the dice rolls down into multiple dice rolls. It's hard to roll 2d6 rolls 7 times though, right? So there's a bunch of ways of doing it. There's a bunch of other YouTube channels do it different ways. And I hemmed and hawed on it. We practiced a bunch and we came down to rolling 1d12 and in a pile basically to resolve it instead. And I'll get to my logic and the math about that in a second. But the nuts and bolts of it is, short story long, I made a decision for me that I liked to change a game into a game that I enjoyed playing, and you guys got to watch it. Now, here's where the weirdness gets in. Some people kind of got offended by that. Some people kind of got weirded out by it, and it triggered a ton of questions. And some were super just curious and nice, and some were like, you're doing it wrong, it screws up the whole math of the game. That's okay. Everyone's entitled to their opinion, and those opinions are fine. But that leads me to my first point of discussion here, and that is well, I wish it was famous, but a very powerful line that stuck to me at one point from another game designer, Thomas Piernan, who wrote Mordheim back in 1999. Great game designer, really nice guy, and very just like what you would aspire to be as a game designer, I think, philosophically, from the way that he writes and the way that he interacts with people. But the line was, I don't get mad when people change the rules to my games to make it what they want. I get mad when they don't. And that's a really powerful statement for a bunch of reasons. Here in this studio, when I am recording games with my friends, I am playing my hobby, and you guys are kind of witnessing it as the camera comes along. I don't make content that I think is going to make other people happy. That's why you don't see me play too many like tournament style games. I'll do it occasionally if I get excited about it. I love playing ITC games for Infinity. There's certain games that grab me and you'll see me get immersed into, but I'm not making content for content's sake. You're watching my hobby live, well, live, but recorded basically. And so that stuff happens. That's philosophically the way that I game. If I want to change something to make it more fun, I do. The Somerset Strikers campaign is supposed to be played as a classic Battletech campaign because Alpha Strike didn't exist back then. Jay and I are playing a lot of the missions in Alpha Strike to make them playable and fun and enjoyable for us. So they don't take a whole weekend to play. We can play them in like 90 minutes to 2 hours and really enjoy the experience and play with all of our pretty toy soldiers. That is a fundamental aspect of my hobby. I tinker with things and change things, and wouldn't it be exciting if make up rules on the fly and stuff like that? Because that's the type of gamer I am. I'm a romantic. I can hear the horns in the distance. I can hear the beating of the drums. I can watch the armies marching to war when I play a game in my head. That's all happening. And that is the first really important point. This is the only part where I'm going to tell you, I think you should do this too. Now, of course, it doesn't work in tournaments. You can't just make up rules. People are going to like, Ash, you're a moron. I can't just say, wouldn't it be fun if we did this in a tournament game? And then we went and did that. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about when you play games and there's no stakes and you're not playing a stranger and you know each other, play the game you want to play and don't worry about, is it in the rules? Because that's not the point. If you came here looking for me to read the rule books, which is ironic because I'm the man who reads books, that's not going to happen. You're witnessing someone else's hobby happen on camera. And so the 2D12 rule is and I've explained it a bunch of times now, but I'm just kind of explaining it once more for feeling for the people in the back, is an aspect of that. You've watched me do this with countless different games. I've made up my own scenarios and rules for Age of Sigmar when I did Realm Quest. You've seen me make up my own rules and scenarios and campaigns for Fallout Wasteland Warfare, for This Is Not a Test. We've done narratively driven games for 40K. We've done narratively driven games for Rogue Trader. We did it in 2nd edition. We've done it for Warhammer Fantasy Battle, tons of different games. If they're not a tournament style game where it just doesn't work to tell a story, or I just don't feel the need to because the game already provides it for me, you'll see me tinker with things and change things and have fun with it, because what's the point otherwise? And this is an example of that. This is just an example of me making a minor tweak. I can back it all up with math, from a game design point of view, as to why it works. And you could try it yourself and see. But the thing I'm going to tell you today to try for yourself is, when you are doing your hobby for yourself, change it to be the experience that you want to have. And that is, if there's a primary message here, this is the top. This is the header of this whole video. Make changes that make you happy and make the gameplay experience what you want it to be. And everyone that we've done, like Owen and I kind of came up with it, and then Jay immediately adopted it and enjoyed it, and everyone I've played with so far has enjoyed it, and it's just the way we play in the studio. So we could play with 2d6 rules. We could play with other house rules, like there's the Death from Above Wargaming, where instead of a 2d6 roll, you roll one colored 2d6 and a bunch of other d6s, and everything comes off the first one. But that just, and that's fine. That's a much better way of doing it than rolling individual handfuls of 2d6s. But again, there was a math thing that bothered me about that resolution system. So it's just not what we adopted. And now I'll show you why. So there you go, short story long. Do what you want in games. Especially when they're home, don't worry about the rules of the game and just get the experience out of the game you want. And if it's perfect out of the rulebook, then that's great. Have it be perfect out of the rulebook and play that way. And if there's something that like sticks in your brain or you find clunky or would enhance the enjoyment of it, then do that too. And if your gaming group doesn't like it, that's fine. And if they do, then that's fine too. And find the things that work for you when it's all said and done. I tend to change games to get people to enjoy them more and come back and play them with me. And so this change has caused that to happen with Battletech. And you could find a game where that would help you to get to play more games if you make that change as well. So I guess what I'm saying is, don't be afraid to change things to the way that you wish they were. When you're playing at home, you're not playing with strangers. And when you're playing a tournament or something like that, and you want to play competitively, or if that's your thing, and just ignore everything I just said. If you accidentally watched the rest of this video and this wasn't what you were looking for, just ignore me. I'm just one guy. In my opinion, it doesn't count for shit. All right, buckle up. It's Ash's budget descriptive aids. My Sharpie was almost dying when I wrote this math explanation of why I use D12s in Alpha Strike instead of a 2d6 roll. Okay, buckle up and get ready. 3 elements here. You have pilot skill and modifiers. You have the dice rolls on a D12, and you have the dice rolls on 2d6. So left to right, pilot skill modifiers. There is no value apart from 1 to 1 assigned to pilot skill or assigned to modifiers to that pilot skill, such as moving, your target movement modifier, jumping, and obstructions. So to give you an example, in this game, you're setting a base target number with pilot skill. Most things are 3 or 4, so let's say it's 3. I start adding modifiers. The thing I'm shooting at has a TMM of, let's say, 1. Now, on top of that, it is behind some cover, so there's additional 1. So I have to roll 5. Now, if I was to look at these values, they are not given any more or less weight. So the pilot skill value is always going to be 1 to 1 to 1. It's always a fixed value. The point values for things, for pilot skill, don't actually, there's a rubric for it, but they don't matter because ultimately it's just a target number. The lower, obviously, the better. A pilot skill of 1, you're trying to roll a 1 or higher. Pilot skill of 5, you're trying to roll a 5 or number as your starting point. That's reflecting the point value of the models. They don't matter in the resolution system, so that argument doesn't work. Now, there is no difference between the value of TMM and the value of things like cover or any other thing. They stack in a line. So basically, your modifiers, if you're to use them visually with dice, they stack in a line of 1s. They go +1, +1, +1, +1, +1. And no modifier is given more or less weight than the modifiers that you start with. So your pilot skill, even though you're playing points for it, the free modifiers, such as how you moved, where you're standing, or how far away you are, don't have a value. So like the distance, for instance, has a value, but you don't pay points for distance. You just move and get it for free. So if I'm shooting you from far away, I'm +4 to what it's going to, like, the target's going to be, and let's say my skill is 3 that I paid points for. That's a free value. That's a point value paid for value. They're all assigned the same weight, right? So let's say I end up with a total number of 8 that I need to roll to hit. Now, how I go and roll that, there's 2 ways of resolving it. In the rule book where you roll 2d6s, this has a fixed value. It's 1 point is always worth 1 point. They never change. The 2d6 roll has a variable value. When I get to the bottom and the top, there is a much less likely increase or rate of it happening than not happening. So at the bottom of either side, to get a 2 or a 12 is a 1 in 36 chance. There's a 1 in 36 chance of those values occurring. Then it goes to 1 in 12, 1 in 12, 1 in 9, 1 in 9, 9, 9, 1 in 6. Sorry, 1 in 30, or 5 in 36, 5 in 36. 1 in 6, 1 in 6, and then finally, 1 in 6 in the middle. These are both 5 and 36. These are 1 and 9. But basically, the value of the pips on the dice versus the target number goes up and down. So rolling an 8 is, the values of 1 to 8 here are all the same, but the chances of rolling a 8 are actually less, right? Because it's just the top end amount than they are of rolling a lower number, which means it's incrementally harder to shoot things further away, and actually statistically way easier to shoot things up close, even though these are given a fixed value. So even though these numbers are all worth 1, a 1 is worth a 1 is worth a 1, a 1 over a 2 or a 3 or a 1 is actually worth a different amount when you roll 2d6. Now when you roll a d12, you're back to fixed values. Every number has a 1 in 12 chance, and your chance of getting something increases the higher you go at a fixed rate. So you have a 1 in 12 chance, 2 in 12 chance, 3 in 12 chance, 4 in 12 chance, 5 in 12 chance. As you get higher of rolling that number or greater. Whereas over here, you add all this together, right? So you have a 1 in 36 basically, plus so that's 1 plus a 3. You have 3 combination dice roll chances. That's 4. So you have a 4 in 36 chance. Up here, it's 1 in 9. So that's going to be a 4 in 36. So that's, yeah, so it's 1. So now you're 8 out of 36 chance of hitting. And that's just by the time you get to 3. So an 8 out of 36 chance of hitting, I don't think that divides nicely. That's actually a 1 in 9. So you have a 1 in 9 chance at the 3. You have a 3 in 12 chance when you get to here. So it climbs at a fixed rate. So you basically have a 1 in 4 versus a 1 in 9. So it's twice as likely at this rate as it is on this rate. So it's basically a math way of saying if these values are all constant, then the resolution system should be all constant. Versus if these values are all constant and you have a bell curve resolution, you intrinsically make it easier to hit at the low end and like at a higher rate than these are worth, and harder at this rate than these are worth. So what happens is the game values modifier stacking more than anything else, and it becomes increasingly difficult to actually make the game do anything, right? If you just stand far away, you actually don't get any results at all. And it's harder to do. And then the second half is, it's just easier to roll a handful of these dice than it is to roll some math and resolve it and look at it quickly than it is to like roll a whole bunch of 2d6 rolls or even a pilot dice plus 2d6. So to give you an example, if something is rolling with variable damage 4 damage dice, I roll 4 D12s, and the way that we've offset the increased critical rate, so it's a 1 in 36 critical rate here, you've got a 1 in 12 critical rate here, so it's increased, is we do the pilot die system where only the pilot die can crit. So it stays 1 in 12. So you get 3 times as many criticals using D12s, but you don't have to, but that's actually good because the rule almost never comes up when you use 2d6. So here, I can look quickly and go, let's say I needed that 8, I got 2 hits. If I do it this way, I got a 1, so now all of these miss, right? So the pilot die becomes more valuable as well when you do a 2d6 roll with 1 die, and if you roll a 1 on here, it's either almost usually everything hits or everything misses. So if this was a 6, everything would hit, or everything would miss. You get a broader distribution of effects when you roll D12s versus the pilot die spiking or not spiking. In this way, I got 2 hits, right, and a miss. And so there it is, variable resolution versus fixed resolution and fast dice. So I like the fixed resolution rate. It basically resulted in, we got slightly more critical effects every now and again before we went into structure, which made the game a bit more exciting because weird critical things happened. We could roll handfuls of dice really quickly and see what our results were. And the overall sort of like spread, it meant that there wasn't like an impossibility rate once you got to the long shots. They happened slightly more often, but also the super up close shots failed more often than they would if you're rolling 2d6. So just like basically it smooths the game out. What happens is the things that happen that are really hard to do become slightly less hard, and the things that are really easy to do become not just like automatic. Because if you're hitting on a 2 on a 2d6 roll, you literally never miss. Right? You can't miss. There's no result lower. Same with you hitting on a 3 or 4, which when you're up close as possible, you almost never miss. Whereas if I rolled the same, like let's say I'm going to do a pilot die system, all of these hit on a 4, which is a very easy number to get to. Versus if I did it with D12s, well, again, they all hit, but there was a lower spread basically possible on these dice because I could roll less. So I missed once there, I missed once there. Whereas if this pilot die goes high, you hit with everything all of a sudden, right? So that's going to hit with everything on a 4. That's going to hit with everything on a 4. That actually hits with all but 1. And in the same 3 dice rolls, I hit with everything, I missed twice, and I missed once, right? So you get a smoother sort of like distribution of values because every value is at a fixed rate.
So there you go. That's why I use D12s for Alpha Strike, because it makes the game smoother, it makes the game go faster, and you're not here, so you can't stop me. But more importantly, do what you like with the games you play. Make them play the way you want them to feel, and you'll play more often and have more enjoyment out of it. I hate listening to gamers sit around and moan about a rule in a game they don't play competitively against strangers. Just change it to be the game you want. There are no ninjas that will come and assassinate you in like your gaming basement for playing in a weird way and playing with your friends. I think we've become preoccupied kind of as a community with playing strangers competitively, and we forget that actually no one tells us how to do this when we're doing it. The rulebook gives you the goal, mission, and outcomes, and 99% of the time those are great, and you just play with them as written, and that's perfect. Both people can walk up to the game table and get what they expect. When you're playing games for fun with your friends and you guys all agree to change something, then just change something. Make your light armor in Mordheim not be as expensive as it is, even though it's kind of pointless to have. Do whatever it is you want to do. It doesn't matter. No one's going to stop you, I promise, and you might get to play more often and enjoy your games more. Big thanks for watching. I'm Ash. Apple Game.